think about if you were not doing what you are doing, what else would you have passion for? What else would you be doing? So if you were not doing what you are doing now, what else you think you would have enjoyed doing? In my case, if I was not doing what I'm doing, I would have loved to be an R&D engineer with my innovation and creative inclination and a mechanical engineer. I would have loved to be an R&D engineer in research and development area. Another thing which attracts me is deep grounding in psychology and actually using and teaching psychology to students. Those are the two areas I would have loved to be. I think my work currently is very close to psychology and very close to human behavior, which is what I love and I'm very passionate about. Think about it. How would this be a question to your coachee as to if you are not doing what you are doing right now, what else would bring passion in you? What else would you like to do? And you can explore some dimensions of that individual in terms of passions, in terms of strengths, and convert it into an appreciative inquiry to really understand the person much better. So I think each of the thoughts gives us a lot of opportunity to explore what is on the table. And sometimes jokingly I say that exploration is a leadership behavior, investigation is a police behavior. So as leaders in organizations, as leaders in institute like yourself, just be aware of when are we falling into a probe and an investigation kind of questioning, and when is our questioning neutral, exploratory, unbiased. And all our conversations, if you really want to be a facilitator of those conversations, the only way is to ask more and tell less. Ask exploratory questions. Ask questions which are designed as neutral questions and are delivered as neutral questions. Because the tone, voice, body language can change a very genuine neutral questions into a very offensive, accusing question. It's one of the great things we do as coaches, and I'm sure all of you do that. How do you convert all the questioning into neutral exploratory questions and not probing and accusation type of dialogues? Having said this, let me share with you my presentation. Okay, so this is one assignment I did on behalf of CFI or under the umbrella of CFI. And out of many assignments, I picked up this one because I thought this was a very successful assignment. All the stakeholders, including manager of the coachee, CFI, HR head of the coachee himself, myself, all of us were extremely happy with the way this assignment was conducted and concluded. So I thought I'll share this as a real case study. And as I said, one of the better ones. And it's again my privilege to be amongst you people and the faculty. I'm going to first start with what are the developmental roles, pure developmental roles, and then we come to the case study. So here is a question for you. What developmental roles have you experienced or have you performed in your career or in your personal life? We are not into chat, but I'll still request you to make a couple of notes, 2 or 3, 4, 5 roles, whichever come to your mind. Make a note of that. What roles have you performed? I'm assuming all of you have a notebook and a pen pencil with you. I'll give you another 30 seconds. Second question is, why do we call the person who helps me learn driving a car a driving instructor and not a trainer? You never call a driving school person as a driving trainer. You always say driving instructor. For that matter, flying pilots, you don't call, you always say flying instructor. So people who start their careers as a cadet pilot go to a small aircraft to start with. Right from those days, you will call them as flying instructor. I have an appointment with my flying instructor. Why don't we call them flying trainer or driving instructor? Food for thought. Okay. So with this background, I'm going to share with you what are pure developmental roles. Now, here is a slide which you can see. On one side, we have pure developmental roles, facilitator, trainer, instructor, teacher, counselor, consultant. These are in a way pure developmental roles. And each of these we can define under each role what are helpees called, what is the role of the helper with respect to helpees, what is the emphasis of the content, where does the meaning of learning gets derived, what is the locus of meaning, and what are the desired outcomes in each role. For example, let me start with teacher, which I think all of us are very familiar with that role. In a teacher role, and if I just open this, we call helpees as students. What is the role of the teacher? Is imparter of information and meaning, conceptual understanding, content emphasis is on conceptual understanding. Locus of meaning comes from the teacher's interpretation. And desired outcome is awareness and understanding by the helpee. To give you a simple example, when I learned physics in school days, and we were taught about first law of Newton. Now it was my teacher who sort of shared that knowledge and information, and the meaning of that and interpretation of that, the teacher gave me, this is how it is interpreted, this is how it is applied in real life. At the end of that, the intention, the content emphasis is that do I conceptually understand Newton's first law of motion or not? And when I finished my physics classes, that class, I had fair amount of awareness and understanding of Newton's laws of motion. So that is how each role we can look at it. I can also use it backwards. And when I say backwards, it's interesting. If my desired outcome is awareness and understanding, I better take on teacher's role. Let me jump to organizations. if I have designed a new performance management system and I want to implement that, and employees do not know it, they do not have understanding of this. So if that is the need, when I design a training around performance management system, the first part of the training it better be a teacher kind of role I take, and I share the new system almost in a sharing model. Then of course I can engage in dialogues and discussions. But initial part then will become a teacher kind of role there. But this is a new concept or a new practice or a new model which I'm sharing with employees. So what I'm trying to say is that in every situation when we design, when we decide what is the need of the helpees or what is the need of the receivers, then we can see what is the ideal role for that need. And then I make sure that my lesson plan is designed accordingly. Then I make sure that my uh, content is designed accordingly. And then I don't confuse teaching with facilitation. Now, somebody asks a question at that stage. It's very easy for me to get into facilitation and start having a dialogue around it. But I can also say that's an interesting question. Let's park it for the time being. Let me finish this part. This is where I begin to draw efficiency of each role. And when the situation is such that I need to do a bit of a counseling, then I put on my counseling hat and do that beautifully. So what is the need? If I'm sensitive to that, it will also help me to pick up the right developmental role and then move on. And then do a good job of that role. And then I can consciously say that now let's open up for discussions, and this will be a facilitation from my side. So what are some of the questions you have for the new performance management system? And we get into that conversation. So distinguishing that many times helps. Let me open up another one, trainer. Helpees are called trainees. And whenever we look at trainer and trainee, it's really in a behavioral context. Shaper of effective behavior. That is the role of the trainer. If I'm doing a training on training skills, after the training, the person who is undergone, he demonstrates effective behaviors of a trainer. Skill acquisition acquires training skills. I do a program for interviewing skills in organizations. After the training, the person should have acquired interviewing skills and use it in real life applications. Locus of meaning comes from the trainer. Desired outcome is effective behavior. So if somebody was to observe that person and can have an old story and new story after the training, what do I expect? I expect 5-6 behaviors to be different in aligned with the skills and behaviors he or she has learned. So the desired outcome is effective behaviors. Am I effectively demonstrating skills and behaviors which I have learned through this training intervention? That is my desired outcome. Okay, let me unpack another one. And I have a suggestion that once we finish developmental roles, before I go to a case study, maybe we can take one round of question answers, because then we will changing gears and go to an experience sharing on the coaching. So let me finish all these roles, and then we can have a short Q&A session, and then we continue with the second part. Let me go further, and I'm sure you're all familiar with all the roles, but we're trying to see how they fit into our models of working, our practices of working, and can we learn something, or can we reinforce some of our existing learning? That is really the objective at this stage. Instructor, students, Instructor is an expert and demonstrator. And instructor word is generally used in the man-to-machine interface. So driving is a driver and the car. Flying is pilot and the aircraft. So whenever we look at man-to-machine interface, we don't use the word trainer because trainer is for behaviors, effective behaviors. And we prefer to use the word instructor. Or if there is a detailed, complicated, standard operating procedure of how to, start a new automated controller machine, CNC machine, I would actually instruct people how to do step by step, step one, step two, step three, step four. So most of the things where technical processes are involved or man-to-machine interfaces are involved, we prefer to use the word instructor. Content emphasis comes from how to do this effectively, how to drive a car effectively. In the process, the instructor shares with me all the tactics and techniques that you see in the desired outcome, strategy, tactics and techniques. Locus of meaning comes from in definition of effectiveness. Many years ago, I remember in those days I used to drive a Maruti 800 car, I think late 80s or early 90s. I was taking a batch of CII professionals from the CII office to Daruheda, beyond Manesar, Daruheda Hero Honda plant. We had a plant visit and I said, come, some of you can join me, we'll go in my car. So by the time we reached there, I think 3 out of 4 people, I had 4 passengers with me, 3 out of 4 people said that, Bridge, we actually did not realize, the smoothness of the drive, no bumps, no gear changing, nothing, absolutely, it was too smooth. To me, they were saying, in some way, they are defining definition of effectiveness. So if I learned how to drive effectively, it can be observed by others. It can be seen by others. And the locus of meaning comes from in definition of effectiveness. So the instructor will tell me what is an effective driving and will guide me, give me techniques, give me tactics to do that. Let me go further. Counselor. Counselees, helpees are called counselees. Counselor is a permissive helper. So if I take my son to a career counseling, counselor will probably help us explore options.
अच्छा इसी बात अब इसको निकालने के
Counselor will probably help me explore options, but leave the choice to us. He can explore pros and cons of different choices, but leave the counselor. Similarly, in marriage counseling, similarly, when I have personal problems which are affecting my performance, effectiveness, my mental wellness, I go to a counselor, explore a lot, help me explore choices and implications of those choices. At the end of the day, counselor will never prescribe. That's what we say, the permissive helper. And generally, content emphasis around life situations and feelings. Locus of meaning comes from the counselee. At the end of counseling decides what to do. Counselee holds the meaning with him or her. And desired outcome is I am helping the counselee to make wise choices. I'm not making those choices for him or her, but I help him or her make wise choices. Then we come to facilitator. We call it participants. Facilitator is a helper in a discovery process. Now you might say that to some extent, does it not overlap with counselor? I think a lot of the skill sets we use as facilitator and counselor can be very common. The difference is counseling isn't related to life situations and feelings. Facilitation can be on anything. I have a business problem and a group is together and I can facilitate them to find a solution. Very master facilitators again will not prescribe solutions, but they will do a self-reliant problem solving with the group so that the group finds a solution and they still believe they have done it, and facilitator does not leave any fingerprints. I can put a group of faculty members together and we can have a 1 hour dialogue on what are the critical success factors of being an effective professor. I may not contribute in terms of content, but I can help 6 of you to have a dialogue amongst all of you, and I can facilitate dialogue to come with the output by asking questions, by making process suggestions, by encouraging, by inviting more inputs, by bringing in people who are being silent. I'm not adding anything to the content, but I am adding to the process and participation. So that is where we say helper in a discovery process, at the end of which all of the 6 professors may go back with different learning. So it's not a linear learning that 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, but it is learning as perceived by each one of them. So we don't call it deductive learning, but inductive learning. Each one is going back with his or her meanings. And they would probably apply in their own ways. Maybe there are few commonalities, maybe there are very minimum commonalities, but they have gone back with their inductive learning. Locus of meaning comes from individual helpees, and that's what we just talked about. Desired outcome is discovery and application. I can bring a group of people in an organization and say, how can we enhance our customer satisfaction? Work with them for 45 minutes. They are generating ideas, they are brainstorming, they are processing brainstorming. I can make process suggestions here and there. How about that? Have you considered that? But nowhere it will be prescription from my side. I don't leave my fingerprints, let the group feel that it has been their output. The problem in some of these roles is, if the role holder has high need for recognition, they end up leaving strong fingerprints on the work of the groups. And that sometimes is not ideally desirable from the role purity point of view. Then we look at consultant. When do you call a consultant? When you have problems. So the role of a consultant is a helper in problem solving. So some company might say that our energy consumption is going up for no reason. Let's call CII consultants from the energy division. Or my NDI might say that we don't know how to best utilize our space which we have. Let's call some interior design consultants and let's have discussion with them to solve our problem. So consultants are helper in problem solving. Or organizations may approach you and give you a consulting project. That, last year we did an employee engagement survey, and the satisfaction from our performance management system is 53. That's pathetic. We want you to diagnose, understand, change the performance management system. 2 years down the road, we should be looking at 75% satisfaction. So a problem will always have the current state and the desired state. And it's for the consultant to define problem, agree with the client, find a solution, help them implement in the client system. So content emphasis comes from situations needing attention. Locus of meaning comes from the client system, and desired outcome is partnering in implementing solutions. I'd like to share an example when we just started Rubicon Learning Systems in 2003. I think very early, it was I think 2004, we had an assignment from a company in Faridabad to do diagnosis and then design training program for top management as well as middle management. Now we were sitting with the CEO, so he stood up and opened the drawer at the back and he showed some file folders lying there, 5-6 folders. He said, I don't want a consultant who will give me one more file to add to my rack, but I want a consultant who will partner with me, handhold me, and jointly implement solutions. So I think that's where we added implementing, partnering, implementing solutions word there. Otherwise, this table has been with us for last 30, 40 years. Because some of the basic things do not change in management and leadership. So partnering and implementing solutions is the desired outcome from a consultant role. Now, I'm going to take a pause, stop my sharing, and be available for some question answers.
Thank you, sir. It was a very informative session. And I think so now people, those who are attending this session can ask questions. You have to unmute yourself and you have to show your screen also. So anyone, please come forward for a question. Vigya ma'am.
Question or a comment?
Vigya ma'am, Kamboj sir. Ma'am, you have to unmute.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chandi Ramani. We have met earlier also.
Yes.
I liked your presentation and getting to know a lot of things from it. One thing that I really want to ask, as you are into consulting and all, we talk quite a bit about appreciative inquiry.
Right.
How much is it really there in the organizations? Because usually if we talk to employees and all, they are talking about that we are asked that let's discuss why it was not done and what are the issues. So appreciative inquiry, what do you think? How much companies are using? What type of companies are using as it, and what percentage is it in practice actually?
Okay, I'll respond to that. I think in last 4 or 5 years, or maybe 5 to 8 years, we have all heard of companies junking the rating system, throw away the bell curve. You're familiar with that. There are a lot of case studies. Harvard case study for Deloitte, who was one of the earlier ones to throw the ranking system.
Yes.
Just look at one point. What are they replacing it with? What they are replacing it with? Frequent touch points.
Okay. Hmm.
Almost like once in 15 days, once in 30 days. So at the beginning of the year, you set goals. Now the job of the leader is to help the team members achieve those goals through a servant leader mindset. And a lot of organizations, in encouraging those touch points, are saying that the dialogue should be, how can I help you become successful on these goals? Even in the entire philosophy of situational leadership, Ken Blanchard, SL2, the approach is, what situational leadership style should I adopt so that it helps my team member? Now, in those dialogues, there is a lot of opportunity for recognizing and appreciating what is going well, also coaching for what is not going well. So if you shift the feedback models in your own language to praise and redirect,
Yes.
those are the words.
Yes.
Either you praise or you redirect. So praise takes the shape of appreciative inquiry. You explore and praise and recognize people. Redirect takes the shape of coaching and development on the job, coaching on the job. So if all your students, all your executive programs, if you bring this flavor of praise and redirect, you're automatically moving on to different quality of dialogues and discussions.
Yeah, it will be different, definitely.
It will be different. Sometimes
Yeah.
Sometimes the language we use conveys our mindset.
Yes.
And I always encourage my colleagues to change the language, because the language changes the mindset.
It changes the mindset. Both
So
the counselor and the counselee, both mindsets are changed.
Yeah. So absolutely.
No doubt.
If every leader has a mindset that I'm here to help you, language will be different.
Yes. Yeah.
And I personally, whatever work I do, whether it's training, consulting, coaching, whatever, I always help people to shape their mindsets. Because if that changes, a lot of things will automatically change.
So when we are making the feedback form, is the new trend is there, where we are also having a column for definitely finding out the passions and appreciations and the good thing that has been done, so that we don't forget when we are having, say, a dialogue, or we are. Is it happening in the organizations? That's what I want to.
I would say to some extent. I would say probably 25% organizations would take it seriously.
Okay.
Not more than that.
Yeah.
In our work, I can share you our practice if that helps you.
Definitely.
When we do even 360-degree feedback or other feedbacks or psychometric assessments, we encourage people to identify their strengths as well as growth opportunities.
Yes.
Again, look at the language. Strengths and growth opportunities. By the time we are coming to action planning, we actually invite people to say, how are you going to build on your strengths? Please document that also.
Yeah.
So it does not, we don't forget that and work only on the growth opportunities. That might people to, weak areas or developmental needs and all that stuff. We again say, okay, how will you sustain? So let me complete my earlier sentence. Praise to sustain, redirect to improve.
Yeah, great. That. Yeah. I hope
My
more
earlier
companies get into it.
my earlier items you can now connect.
Yeah.
Praise to sustain or improve further. But more important, praise to sustain, redirect to improve. Now, once you bring that culture in the feedback and dialogues, you will see it automatically becomes on the lines of appreciative inquiry and coaching on the job.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chandraramani, you were saying that your first, what you want to try to change is change mindsets. Of course, that's the most important thing, but it is also the most difficult because changing mindsets is actually can be a very long process. So, how do you kind of start the process?
In coaching assignments, I must say that it is relatively easier because you get anywhere from 6 to 9 to 10 months with a coachee. And in that journey, you make coachees examine their self-beliefs. And when coachees examine their self-beliefs, I have a very simple system. I have a list of 10, 12 beliefs. I say, please rank them. Rank as in 1 to 12. And examine implications of your top 3 beliefs. Implications, desirable and undesirable. And the next invitation is, do you want to live with your undesirable effects? Or would you like to recraft your belief? We don't say change your belief. We say recraft your belief to a language with which you are comfortable and it removes some undesirable effects. I'll give you an example. And you're right, it takes people time to even recraft a belief. What about changing? So some of my coaches take 2 weeks, 3 weeks to even recraft because I don't recraft for them. They say, sir, आप बताइए. मैंने कहा नहीं है, आपको recraft करना है, आपकी problem है. So one coachee after 3 weeks comes and preach, I have recrafted my belief. I said, tell me more about it. And he was so proud, warmth on his face. He read out that recrafted belief. And I said, this is great. Now you start living it day by day. So I'm sure all of you realize, daily reflections is an extremely powerful way of development. If all of you are not doing it, start doing it. At the end of the day, 7 minutes. How was my day? What went well? What did not go so well? What will I do differently tomorrow? That's it. I said, this is your leadership dry dock. The aircrafts go inside the hangars during night time for maintenance. Ships go to a dry dock. I said, where is your leadership dry dock? This 7 minutes, your leadership dry dock. Every day, 7 minutes, start a new diary. Write the date, what went well today, what did not go so well today, what will I do differently next time? Do it for 3 months, you would be a different person. Some of you may be doing it already. But that 3 months, you have generated a self-feedback mechanism. And once in 15 days, read out to a colleague and you will see the fun. Learning from each other. So I invite leaders to maintain a leadership dry dock journal, and they find tremendous mileage out of it. So those are some ways of changing the mindset. In a training class, you can give right amount of questions to people to reflect and think. You can show a video and have discussions, and the video may be out of the box thinking for those people, and then you help people examine it, and slowly you have 2 years time with the students. You have a lot of time to change their mindsets. one of the organizations I'm associated with is on emotional intelligence, 6 seconds, global network of 6 seconds. They have tried out in management schools. They do emotional intelligence assessment at the beginning and help people through some kind of interventions. And again, they test out emotional intelligence at the end of 2 years and they find changes.
So I just had a submission, not a question as such. So yes, I would like to just know that why do we need to divide, so many categories for a teacher who's actually the traits of a good teacher is that he has to be a counselor, he has to be a helper, he has to be an instructor, he can be, training the students. So all under one umbrella of being a good teacher. So why I am asking is because when we, classify these categories, we are going into too much of probably a very materialistic world where we are only talking about being a trainer or an instructor. But when I feel that I am a good teacher, I have to perform all the roles very carefully and very nicely. So a good teacher is the one who takes you, who helps you to go towards the reality, to understand what he is, and helps you to introspect. What we say, tamso ma jyotirgamay. So it's all in our Vedas if we read it carefully. So why do we need to classify and categorize the teachers as instructors and counselors and helpers these days? What we do? Just your opinion. I wanted.
It's a great question, and I'm going to ask you: do you drive a car?
Yes, I do drive a car.
Is it a geared car or automatic?
No, it's a geared car.
Geared car. So today you change gears
Yes.
almost unconsciously.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about whether I should drive in first gear, second gear, or third gear.
So,
Do you have to think about it?
no, it's all automatic. Impulse.
But when you were learning, how was it different?
Yeah, because I was novice, so I had to be very careful about when do I change the gears and when do I need it, why do I need it.
Absolutely, absolutely. That fits here. How do you think that fits here?
Yes, but then instructor is a teacher for me. So why do I need to say that instructor is different and the teacher is different?
Hold on. Why should I know first gear is different from fourth gear? Because they perform different functions.
Yes.
Same thing fits here.
Hmm.
Once you are a master teacher or a world-class teacher, you don't have to worry about those things. You would automatically slip into those roles because that is what is more appropriate at that time. But today sometimes happens to me when I do my dry dock reflections and I say, today in that training program, I think we digress for 15-20 minutes and I could have avoided that by being in my teacher role. You get my point?
Yeah.
So it's important to understand only to realize, am I slipping it in a very natural, seamless manner? Or I need to practice that more of awareness. That's all. You're 100% right. Today I don't think about which role I should be playing. No. And I'm sure you don't have to think about.
Yes.
But being aware of these helps me, which is the most appropriate role, because there seems to be a gap in knowledge. The most appropriate role is being teacher role, not a facilitator role. And lo and behold, you drive in fourth gear because that is what is the most appropriate gear. Just keep that perspective. It's a great question, and my only purpose was to make you sensitive to each of these dimensions. Not that you should operate only in that. No, you never know when do you have to replace the role. Now, a great question for all of you. So where do coaching and mentoring fit in? I just shared that screen once and then we are going to section 2. Don't answer me, but think about where do mentoring and coaching fit in? they are not pure roles. They are hybrid roles, and they draw upon all these pure roles. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Coaching and mentoring are hybrid roles, and we draw upon these pure roles to make a combination of whatever may be required at that point of time. Starting with second part, this was an assignment. Context is a well-diversified group. The focus company is in textile and garment space. Turnover approximately this. The business is headed by a CEO. Talent management at senior levels is anchored at corporate level. CEO was the line sponsor of the Kochi. So Kochi is the direct report of the line sponsor CEO. And HR director was the HR sponsor of the coaching assignment. And Kochi is head of the global exports. About 60% global geography he covers. In our assignments, we insist for a line sponsor and an HR sponsor. And many of the meetings we have with sponsors and Kochi together. This is just a track to indicate you that we track all coaching activities very tightly. So introductory meeting 1, introductory meeting 2, C plus C is coach plus Kochi, and SS is our sponsors. Now interesting, in this sponsor alignment meeting, the HR sponsor said that that Bridge, we have a competency framework in our organization. You think you can integrate that in the coaching assignment? I said, that's great. We will fully integrate that. So they had values framework defined, 5 values. And under those 5 values, there were total 17 competencies. So they just gave me one slide with those 5 values and 3 or 2 bullets under each. And that was about 17 bulleted items. So then I said, no problem, I'll convert that. So I converted those into behavioral statements, and I used that set of 17 behaviors for the 360-degree feedback. So on an Excel sheet, this was sent to all the 360-degree respondents. And I had, in my planning process, I had opened up 5 weeks window to receiving these back and analyzing them and be ready to give Kochi 360-degree feedback. So this 360-degree feedback was shared with the Kochi. Kochi had already an old Hogan report and a recent leadership profile assessment report. So I chose not to do any more psychometric assessment. Now, after I received Excel sheet back from respondents, then I had one-on-one telephonic interviews with all respondents, basically looking for why they had rated at a particular level, examples, stories which they could relate to. So that was followed, and then we did convergence. We did convergence of 360-degree feedback, his self-assessment, sponsor's assessment, which I took from the line sponsor. We did all that convergence together and converted into goals and action plans, coach and Kochi. This is the stage, I think, Dr. Vidya, I'm trying to remember who asked me a question about beliefs. This is where I did some work with him on his own self-limiting beliefs and implications of that. So he was a person who would not agree for a change unless he was convinced about it, which was positive and a minor hindrance also in his growth journey. And this is where I did some work with him on his beliefs, and slowly he started appreciating the other perspective. Then we did review of goals and actions. We continued with sponsor alignment, which is we wanted sponsors' blessings on the goals and actions. So alignment on coaching goals and actions, updated status and closure outlook. Very good meeting for 45 minutes with sponsors. We continued to work on goals and actions through periodic review. After about 2 months, we continued review and we planned for a closure 360-degree feedback. Now, how do you do quantification of the change? So one thing we did is because finally he had only one coaching goal. Because he said if this goal is taken care of, a lot of other goals are automatically taken care of. And this goal had 6 behaviors, 6 actions and behaviors to support, which we were reviewing periodically. So I said, we'll take feedback on these 6 behaviors. And the method of feedback was, this is the closure feedback I'm talking about. And the method of that feedback was, what is the degree of change you observe in this person on this behavior? Slight change, moderate change, or significant change? So this was not a qualitative feedback, but we created a skill for measuring the degree of change they experienced in this person. Plus, we took qualitative feedback from the CEO, and then in the feedback from respondents, besides the degree of change, there was also one column. What will be one suggestion for him going forward? So this closure feedback and the suggestions helped us to develop his sustenance plan after I was to disengage from the assignment. So that's what we did. So item number 12, you will see closure 360-degree feedback processed, sustenance plan developed. Item number 13 is 3-way closure meeting with sponsors, coachee and coach. By this time, I was so confident about the coachee that the last meeting, I took only 5 minutes to set the context and invited the coachee to share his growth journey right from the beginning till the period of about 8 to 9 months. And he did a wonderful job. His sponsors asked him a lot of questions, and to my pleasant surprise, we were able to convince them on each of the questions they asked him. This is why, and some feedback I received after that, I call this as a very successful assignment. So this was a developmental agenda for the assignment. Coachee was extremely high on his performance, but he had some rough edges which needed to be ironed out or which needed to be sort of facilitated. So there's wonderful strengths, result oriented, has VAT. This is voice on the table. He would speak up without fear of anything. That he would be a customer ambassador inside the organization. Perseverance, tenacity, excellent at customer relations, customer advocate, domain subject matter expert. Growth areas were overly assertive, tends to dominate in cross-functional situations, listening, at times stubborn when pushed. So keeping this in mind, so I talked about Hogan report, we converted into 17 behaviors, Excel sheet, one-on-one conversations. This is how we took the feedback from respondents. And this is an example of how we use these behavioral statements and a rating scale of 10 and some comments if people wanted to give. So the actual list is 17 items, and each of them is linked to a competency in their framework. That's how we took feedback, and then after feedback, I had done one-on-one interviews to understand that feedback. This is how the final results were collated. Interestingly, his highest scores which others gave him ranged from 9.5 to 7. The lowest was 7 and highest was 9.5. His self-rating, of course, was 10, 10, 10, 10 on everything, which is also a question which in a small way, I confronted him as to what do you make out of this. And these were some qualitative comments which people had put. At the end of which we just arrived at one goal. Now this is how we write goals. So coaching aim was to improve interpersonal effectiveness in all interactions. Goal is to enhance my facilitation and collaboration behaviors by 31st of July 29 and sustain beyond. This is how we write SMART goals in coaching. So what has to be achieved by when, and the how part then gets covered in actions. Actions: demonstrating solution-oriented approach in day-to-day work, aiming for win-win options always, facilitating conversations in conflict situations, always responding and not reacting. Measures would be, measure for the closing feedback will be 360-degree closure feedback, planned for mid-September, and self-reflections ongoing. So this is the daily reflection log and weekly reflection log I was talking about. That is the self-reflection which we would review when we would meet. That is how these goal sections and measures were done. Now, this is the assessment of the closure feedback, the same four behaviors. And the scale was 1 to 3. 1 was minor change, 2 was moderate change, and 3 was significant change. So demonstrating solution-oriented approach, he rated himself at 3. Others average rated him at 2. Aiming for win-win 2.4, he had rated 3. Facilitating conversions, other rated him higher, 2.62. Always responding and not reacting, again, others rated him higher than his self-reflection. So overall, this was seen as a positive shift in his behaviors. His line sponsor comment was, coaching has done a good job on its part. Practice will help so-and-so consistently remain at significant level of change. And there were some other suggestions, as I told you, that we also collected some suggestions. Now, these actions and some suggestions became his sustenance plan. So sustenance plan, coaching aim and coaching goal, supporting actions for sustenance, and what will be a tracking process again for this. And in November, we had three-way meeting with sponsors and coachee again. This is where it was his session. I was just present as a fly on the wall. And then finally, some typical characteristics, some other things you might say. He was fond of Starbucks, so we had introductory meetings in Starbucks. And later on, we used to have meetings in our office, which was, the Starbucks was in between his home and office. So he would bring cups of Starbucks to our office and we would have our meetings. HR sponsor had indicated. Then line sponsor was a very result-oriented CEO. So at the end of our first meeting, he says, "So when do we wrap it up?" So I said about 6 to 8 months. And we took 10 months, largely because of their non-availability, not because of anything at my end. I used to update CEO regularly, and he liked that. On many things, Kochi used to push me back in terms of his ownership. This is where some work around his beliefs, sharing perspectives, exploratory questioning were helpful. In the closure, I gave him the stage to talk about his journey, and he did a great job and answered all the questions. CFI has a standard sheet for getting feedback from clients, and I think they gave very positive feedback. Outstanding, outstanding, very good. Nothing less than 4 or 5 outstanding. And we also have a question: how does a sponsor feel about his own involvement? So he says, satisfied with my own involvement. And these were all the coach ratings. All these were coach ratings. So, epilogue. Invited Kochi and his wife at a neighborhood barista and handed over coaching completion certificate. Very pleasant feeling. Then we left his wife for a few minutes to reflect on. So me and Kochi went out. When we came back, we asked her, what change has she observed in last 1 year in him? What change would she like to see in him after a year? And then we had a 3-way conversation over a cup of barista tea coffee. And that's all. Your question answers.
Thank you, sir, for telling us the benefits of mentoring and coaching, and for sharing the feedback of the survey which you have carried out on people.
This is a real case study, real case study.
And I was very happy to see the observations. You know, somebody liked Starbucks, so his first meeting was held at Starbucks. And then a lot of motivation factors were also involved in it.
My office and my home are very close. And in Gurgaon, you find places like this. And he also lives nearby. So that was all helpful. Saturday was his off day, but I work 365 days. So we used to have our coaching meetings on Saturdays in my office over cups of Starbucks.
Now the floor is open for questions. I would request all my colleagues to ask questions.
Normally, all of us teachers know about the roles, multiple roles that we play of teacher, guide, mentor, coach, etc. But the challenge that all of us face from ourselves and the student side is that how to handle that, to unlearn that this is, being a teacher is not the only role that I have. All of us have read so many things about it, but what are your, words of advice that how do we ensure that we unlearn the traditional rules and actually move on to a facilitator roles, especially in MBA programs? And even our students expect us to be teachers most of the time. So how do we ensure that they also accept the new roles from us?
I think, I'm sure you are master at that. I probably can't tell you anything. But some of the things which help me, I can share about a few other things which help me. For example, I'm starting teaching a course very shortly to postgraduate students. So, and I was thinking, how do I do this in virtual model? Because I've always been teaching face-to-face so far. And these are, I'm talking about MBA classes. So this time, I said, okay, so let's say every session, I say, okay, 20 minutes of teach. And then create a discussion opportunity, either through a case study or some questions, and send them to breakout rooms. And then peep into each breakout room and there facilitate, if you can, those discussions. Now, I don't have a very large batch. It's a batch of about 33 people put into 5 groups. So if it's about, let's say, half an hour or 45 minutes of case study in breakout rooms, I can still peep into each breakout room, stay there 5-7 minutes, ask 1 or 2 facilitative questions, move to the next group, bring back to the larger group and do a large group facilitation, and then conclude. So this is what I have thought through. When I start doing it, I will see what best works for me. I attended a global program very recently, and this was, you will be surprised, this was, plenary group would have about 1,500 people. And small sessions will have 100 each. And it was like a mega summit. Now, in that plenary group is a teach session. And when you break out in smaller groups, and you could choose what theme you would like to go to, in that theme, there'll probably be about 60, 70. And there it's a Q&A, like what we are doing right now. So you have a plenary session, then branch out, then split into groups. You can choose which subgroup theme you want to go, and then question answers. Now, with you being a single faculty, I know, and if the group size is large, what is your group size?
So normally 60, about 50, 55 do attend at one point in time.
So I'm sure you have your own best practices to deal that. But this is how I'm going to conduct my sessions. 20 minutes, 25 minutes of teach, question answers, case study, come back. So I have 90-minute sessions. So I'll probably create 2 opportunities for discussions.
So, sir, as a coach, do you come across those challenges that people are going through in their personal lives and that is impacting their professional lives? Similarly, for us as students also, they have this. So how do we learn to manage that and balance that?
I think by design, we are all not trained to be counselors. So we don't put on that cap. But every manager in an organization and every coach like us has some awareness of go and address it up to level 1, which is through a facilitative problem solving process. So what choices do you have? What are the implications? What will help you make those choices? But beyond that, we do not go near any therapeutic work or a therapist kind of work or a counselor kind of work. Sometimes in our coaching, we are advised that when you detect something, then maybe you can create ownership of the coachee to go and see a counselor. That role you can play to create ownership where the coachee feels, yes, I think it's not a bad idea to go and see a counselor. Still, there is a lot of stigma in our society to go to a counselor.
How do we ensure that these adult trainers and faculty remain open to feedback? That's a big challenge.
Let's say your Madhu is delivering a session. Before the session, you ask Madhu, and you have a relationship which accepts that thing. Madhu, for a change, I'm thinking of sitting in your session. Is there anything you would like me to observe and give you feedback? Now, giving feedback or receiving feedback is whose need. And if Madhu tells you before the session that, right, Now, my question was now, whose need is it to receive feedback? Particularly if she has told you that I'm actually fine with everything, but sometimes I sort of take some time in responding to questions. If you can just observe that, that will be great for me. Now you have contracted the feedback dimension. Important to do that. Feedback giving should not be giver's need. It should be receiver's need. If Vishwamohan Bansal says that, I want to see one of you, how do you coach people? Is it okay if I sit through one of your sessions? Then it is his need and you will be under pressure. But if he says, I'd just be fly on the wall, but is there anything specific you would like me to observe? Please observe to what extent my exploration is neutral and not biased. That's all I want you to observe. If you can make feedback receiver's need, your job is done. That is why we do 360 degree. हम कोची को क्या बोलते हैं यार तुम्हारे सब लोग ये बोल रहे हैं. Now development becomes his need. That is why we do all these things to create need. One of the things we used to do when I was in my career in Xerox, we had a field sales training manager. And he would tell a salesperson that I'm coming with you on field accompaniment calls. वो sales का बंदा पहले ही pressure में आ जाता था. But when we changed the model, we told them that you tell the salesperson, I'm going to come with you tomorrow for 2-3 calls. What would you like me to observe and give you feedback on? और ये आप अपने स्टूडेंट्स को भी बताइएगा जब फीडबैक वगैरह का चैप्टर करते हैं आप. When they go out of your institute, they should have that mindset of feedback. That how do I create ownership of feedback? In fact, even in their peer group, when they give feedback to each other, they can practice this model.
Bridge, again in the lighter vein, when you were saying this thing, I was going to ask you, you have been coaching the CEOs and, taking feedback of the change from his wife and sitting in a warm coffee place. Have you done it the other way also, coaching the ladies and taking feedback from their husbands?
In fact, I missed this opportunity in this case that we should actually pre-contract. So when we are doing initially 360 degree feedback, that is the time we encourage our coaches to include family members. Now, in my current assignments, 2 out of 6 people have opted their daughters to give feedback. And I have already taken that feedback, discussed with them. They have taken an improvement idea based on that. When we go to closure, we'll again ask daughters ki kya change laga aapko. We'll do that.
This is Professor Kamboj here.
Yes, sir.
Sir, I'll just actually my comment is I've been teaching, rather I've been in service for over 40 years, both in the armed forces as well as an instructor and a teacher. Here I am using both the words, instructor as a teacher and as a teacher, instructor for the weapons and as a teacher for my trainees, or you can say my
education classes, education. You have
education classes. And now I am a teacher.
Right.
So now the things which you have said are really very helpful, but we have been doing all these things, but we never knew about the breakup of what you have done. And regarding the feedback which you have just now mentioned, yes, I'm also a writer. I take a feedback from daughter-in-law who has been an editor in one of the channels, I take a feedback before I submit it. So,
Absolutely. Wonderful.
so this is actually the thing which you have today told us is really helpful. I do not know about others, but it will be really helpful for me,
Oh,
and
no. I mean,
I'll be taking a feedback mm, from even from my students regarding the coaching
of course.
and the teaching which I do. It's a very good learning which you
Of
have
course.
told.
Of
Yeah.
course. One of
Thank
the
you very much, sir. Thank
No,
you
no,
very
it's my
much, sir.
pleasure. We are all in the journey. We are all in the same journey. Somebody is 1 or 2 steps ahead and somebody is yet to travel those steps. But we are all in the journey. Another thing I can tell you, after every coaching session, I ask people, or after every important conversation, and you start doing that and you will see the wonders. So let's say Vishwamohan has had a 20-minute conversation with one of you on some important topic, theme, at the end of which you are about to depart. And he says, Anil, we have had this discussion. So, how do you feel about it? Your response to that question will tell him what is your ownership and commitment of the discussion.
Very correct.
Try it out. I do it with all my coaches, all my non coaching conversations. I say, so we just discussed this issue. So, how do you feel about it? If the person says, oh no, this was absolutely great, I think this makes us very clear, our plans are clear, we exactly know what to do. What is your assessment of the commitment?
Yes, sir. Now I understand that I've been a counselor also because I've been counseling after when I had hung my uniform. I'd been counseling the youngsters about the armed forces. Now I realize that I have been overshooting into the other's domain.
The best way to describe facilitation is to help others help themselves.
Yes, exactly. So, yes,
So if I come to you and you help me only by asking the right questions,
correct, correct, sir.
your job is
Absolutely.
done. Your
Yes,
job
yes.
is done, and I have got my answers.
Yes, and at times I have been a trainee also. At times, yeah, rather always I want to learn something, and now I realize at times I have not been asking the correct question. If I was a coachee or I was a coachee at that time, I didn't ask the correct question. So I may have not got the correct answer for that.
So facilitation is all about asking the right questions.
Correct, correct.
That's all.
Thank you very much, sir, for clearing all my doubts. And now I'll have to be really very careful, and I'll have to stick to those the criteria which you have told about all these things.
After
Thank you
six
very much, sir.
after 6 months, I'll sit in your car and tell you whether it was a smooth drive or not.
Wonderful, wonderful, sir. I love you that you come to my class also, sir. That will be really helpful, sir. Thank you, sir.
Now I would like to request Chairman Sir for vote of thanks.
No, it's a vote of thanks from all of us together.
I would
So
like
this
to introduce you, sir.
no, come on, yeah. Bridget and me are, together for, I can't count the number of years, we studied together, okay, in our engineering college. So it's been like that. He's always been a very highly respected intellectual, even from the college days. Okay, so that is the equation. He was 1 year senior to me, but we had a warm equation, because he was a cricketer and a great intellectual support to everybody, and he continues to be so. And it's a matter of chance that although we were in entirely different places, different domains, different professions, but somehow we kept in touch throughout the journey. So it's something very interesting. And as I mentioned at the beginning, they never got into, situations which you don't find an answer. I have been confiding him and taking his advice. So this is what it is. Thank you so very much. That's what I say.
Love to help you in any way.
No, you have been doing it all the time. You have introduced us to so many new people. You took me to that, 6 seconds event, also 7 seconds or whatever. So you have been trying to do whatever to make me learn something, which at times I failed to learn, but you have been doing your best to do something on me also.
No.
Yeah, no, it's a fact, yeah.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to work with you people.
Thank you so very much. And I thought, that today's Teachers' Day should start differently at the NDIM. So that is why it's a matter of chance that Bridge gave us time for today only, because he is otherwise a very, very busy person. So thank you very much from all of us. And as they have mentioned, now they have a right on to you, and they'll keep on requesting you and keep on asking for your advice, mentoring, coaching, guiding on so many other issues.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate. And thanks for giving me this opportunity to be of any help. I enjoyed working with you, and I'm glad the attendance did not fall significantly, or did not fall at all. Normally, towards the end of the session, you start seeing people signing off. Thank you so much once again.